Hey everyone, welcome back to the Behavior Code. I'm Maria.
And I'm Gabriel, and today we are getting into something that I feel like pretty much everyone relates to on some deep, frustrated level.
Yes, so, real talk. How many times have you said to yourself, I just need more time? Like, if I only had one more hour in the day, everything would be fine.
Oh, constantly, constantly. I had this whole thing last year where I was convinced that if I just woke up at 5 a.m., all my problems would disappear.
Did they?
No, I was just tired and still procrastinating, but now at 5 in the morning.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because the title of today's episode is literally, You Don't Need More Time, You Need More Focus. And I think that reframe is it hits different once you actually sit with it.
Really does, because we keep optimizing for quantity of time when the actual problem is the quality of our attention.
Exactly. And we're going to break down why that is, where it comes from, what it does to our brains, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. So let's get into it.
So, I want to start with something that really kind of blew my mind when I first came across it. There's this study, and I'm blanking on the exact citation, but the finding was essentially that knowledge workers are interrupted on average every 3 to 5 minutes during their workday.
3 to 5 minutes?
3 to 5 minutes, and then, and this is the part that gets me, it takes on average 23 minutes to fully regain focus after an interruption.
So you're basically never actually focused.
Right? Like mathematically, it doesn't even work, and yet we all sit at our desks for 8, 9, 10 hours and wonder why we haven't gotten anything meaningful done.
And I think part of the reason this happens is that we confuse being busy with being productive. Like, I'm in back to back meetings all day, I'm responding to Slack messages, I'm doing things, but at the end of the day, I haven't moved the needle on anything that actually matters.
Yes, and that busyness feels productive. It gives you this hit of like, I'm doing stuff, but it's shallow work, right? It's not the deep, focused kind of work that actually creates results.
Hal Newport talks about this a lot, the distinction between deep work and shallow work. And his argument is that the ability to do deep work is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable at the same time.
Which means if you can actually focus, you have a serious competitive advantage, like not just personally, professionally too.
Huge advantage. Okay, so let's talk about why time feels so scarce. Because I don't think it's just about being busy. I think there's something more structural going on.
Yeah, and I think the big one, and this is going to surprise nobody, is our phones.
Yeah, shocker.
But like not just in the obvious I'm scrolling TikTok for an hour way. It's the constant low-level interruption. Every notification, every little buzz, every little red badge on an app, each one of those is a tiny context switch.
And context switching it's brutal on the brain because every time you switch tasks, your brain has to essentially reload everything. Like it's not like a computer where switching is instant. For humans, there's a real cognitive cost.
The term researchers use is attention residue. Like, even after you've gone back to your main task, part of your brain is still lingering on whatever distracted you.
Oh, such a good way to put it. Attention residue. I feel that. Like you're reading something important and that a text comes in and you glance at it, even if you don't respond, and suddenly you're half reading, half thinking about the text.
Exactly. And this compounds over the course of a day. By 3 p.m., your brain is just fried. Not because you did so much meaningful work, but because you've been switching context all day long.
Which then creates this feeling of, I don't have enough time, when actually what you don't have is enough sustained attention.
Bingo. And that feeling of time scarcity, it actually makes things worse because when we feel rushed, we tend to default to reactive behavior. We answer emails, we go to meetings, we respond to whatever is urgent, even when it's not important.
The urgent versus important matrix. Eisenhower's thing.
Yeah, exactly. And most of us live almost entirely in the urgent but not important quadrant. And we wonder why we feel stuck.
Okay, I want to zoom out a little here because I think it's really important to understand that this isn't accidental. Like, this is by design.
Oh, absolutely. The attention economy is very real and very intentional.
So, for anyone who hasn't come across this term before, The attention economy basically refers to the idea that in a world of information abundance, attention becomes the scarce resource. And companies, specifically tech companies, are competing for your attention as their primary business model.
Because attention equals eyeballs, and eyeballs equal ad revenue. It's that simple.
Right. And what's wild to me is just how sophisticated this has gotten. Like these apps, Instagram, TikTok, even email clients, they're designed by teams of engineers and behavioral scientists, specifically to keep you engaged as long as possible.
Variable reward schedules, pull to refresh. That's literally a slot machine mechanic. You don't know what you're going to get when you refresh, so you keep doing it.
The infinite scroll, no natural stopping point, so there's no moment where your brain gets a signal that says, okay, we're done here.
And notifications, the little red badge, the buzz, those are designed to create urgency, to make you feel like something important is happening right now that you're missing out on.
Which is usually not true. But the feeling is real.
And here's the thing that really gets me. We know this. We know all of this. We've read the articles, we've seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, we know the tricks, and yet it still works on us.
Because knowing about a manipulation isn't the same as being immune to it. Like, I know cookies are bad for me. Still eat them.
Right? Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of the self-blame comes from. People feel like they lack discipline or willpower, but the truth is, you are up against billions of dollars of engineering specifically designed to hijack your attention.
And your willpower is a finite resource. It depletes. So the answer isn't just try harder. The answer is changing your environment so you're not fighting that battle all day.
Which is something we're going to get into, but I just want people to hear that. If you struggle to focus, it's not a character flaw. It's a feature of the environment you're in, and the environment was designed to make you struggle.
That's really important, and I think it's validating for a lot of people because the self-blame spiral is real and it's counterproductive.
Totally. Okay, so now let's get into the psychology side of this, because I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Yes, so the psychology of distraction and procrastination. This is, okay, I nerd out about this stuff.
I know, and I love it.
So let's start with dopamine, because I think dopamine gets misunderstood a lot. People think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, like you get dopamine when something good happens.
Isn't it?
Well, sort of, but more accurately, dopamine is about anticipation. It's about the wanting and the seeking, not necessarily the having. So, dopamine spikes when you anticipate a reward, not when you get it.
Oh, that reframes a lot actually. So the buzz before you check your phone, that's a dopamine hit.
Exactly. The little burst of, ooh, what is it, before you see the notification. And then, often, you look and it's something completely meaningless and you feel nothing. But you still check again in 5 minutes because your brain is chasing that anticipation spike.
And there's another layer here that doesn't get talked about enough. Mental fatigue. Like your brain is burning actual glucose to do cognitive work. And after a full day of constant switching and micro decisions, you hit this wall where even simple things feel hard.
Decision fatigue. Barack Obama famously said he wore the same style of suit every day so he didn't have to think about it, because every decision, even a trivial one, depletes your decision-making capacity.
Steve Jobs with the black turtleneck, the same idea. It sounds like a quirk, but it's actually very rational.
And that's the kind of thinking we can apply to our own lives. Like, what decisions can I automate or eliminate? What choices can I make once so I don't have to make them over and over?
Meal prep, laying out your clothes the night before, having a default weekly schedule instead of planning each week from scratch.
All of these things reduce the cognitive overhead so that when you sit down for your deep work, you have more available capacity. You're not already running on empty.
That is both fascinating and kind of horrifying.
Welcome to neuroscience. So these apps are essentially hijacking your dopamine system. They're creating dopamine loops, cycles of anticipation, checking, mild reward, back to anticipation.
And those loops train your brain to prefer short, unpredictable bursts of stimulation over longer, sustained effort, which is exactly the opposite of what deep work requires.
Yes, deep work requires you to sit in discomfort, to stay with a hard problem even when your brain is screaming at you to do something easier.
And that's where procrastination comes in, because I think a lot of us think procrastination is about being lazy, but it's actually more often about emotional avoidance.
Say more about that.
So, the task you're avoiding, it usually triggers some negative emotion: fear of failure, fear of judgment, perfectionism, feeling overwhelmed. And procrastination is just your brain's strategy for avoiding that discomfort.
So it's not that you don't want to do the work, it's that the work feels threatening in some way.
Right. And your brain, which is wired for survival and not productivity, goes, hey, let's check Instagram instead. That's safe. That feels fine. And before you know it, an hour has gone by.
And then you feel worse because you didn't do the thing, which makes the thing even more emotionally loaded the next time, which makes you more likely to avoid it again.
It's a cycle, a procrastination loop, and breaking it isn't just about time management, it's about emotional regulation.
Which is why just make a to-do list is not enough. You can have the most beautifully organized task list and still not do anything on it.
Oh, I know this from personal experience. I've organized my tasks instead of doing my tasks. The organizing felt productive.
That's a classic one. Task management theater. You're very busy not doing things.
But seriously, I think one of the most important things anyone can do is ask, what am I actually afraid of here? Because the answer to that question is usually more useful than any productivity hack.
100%. And we'll get into some of the practical tools in a bit. But first, I want to touch on something called fear of deep work because I think it's underrated as a concept.
Go for it.
So, fear of deep work is this thing where people avoid concentrated focus not because they're lazy, but because they're afraid of what they might find out. Like, if I really sit down and try hard and I still fail, that's more threatening than if I just never really tried.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's real, because if you half-ass it, you can always tell yourself, well, I didn't really try. You have an excuse.
Exactly. Full effort is full vulnerability. And a lot of us, unconsciously, protect ourselves from that by staying busy and distracted.
That's a heavy one, but important, because recognizing that pattern is the first step to getting out of it.
Okay, so let's pivot to the good stuff, the practical stuff. Because I don't want people to walk away from this feeling like their brain is broken or the world is against them.
Although both of those things are a little bit true.
A little bit, yeah. But there's a lot you can do, and I want to start with the most important mindset shift, which is single tasking.
Yes, please. Can we retire multitasking as a virtue?
We really need to, because the research is so clear on this. There's really no such thing as multitasking. What you're actually doing is rapid task switching, and every switch costs you.
And yet, we still list it as a skill on resumes. Strong multitasker. Like, that's a good thing. And I think it's worth naming something specific about the attention economy that people might not realize. It's not just social media. Email itself is a huge attention trap. The average office worker checks email about 96 times per day.
96?
96 times. That's every 5 minutes if you're working an 8-hour day.
And every time you check, even if there's nothing there, you've interrupted whatever you were doing. You've paid the context switching tax.
An email is designed in a way that creates this anxiety loop, like there might be something urgent in there. And so you keep checking because the not knowing feels worse than knowing.
The fix isn't revolutionary, but it works. Batch your email. Check it twice a day, maybe at 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., and actually turn off notifications between those times.
And if you're worried about missing something urgent, most things that feel urgent in the moment aren't. And the things that are genuinely urgent, people will find another way to reach you.
You know what? I resisted this so long because I felt like I'd be letting people down. And then I tried it, and nobody noticed. Nobody was upset. Nothing fell apart.
Because we've overconditioned ourselves to believe that immediate response is a virtue, but it's not. It's trained behavior, and it can be untrained.
I also want to add something on the procrastination piece because I think there's an element of self compassion that's really underutilized as a tool for getting things done. It really isn't. So, single tasking, doing one thing at a time fully, is actually the faster path, not just the more fulfilling one, but literally faster.
Because the quality of your output is better. You make fewer mistakes, you don't have to redo things.
Exactly. Okay, so practical tip number one, pick one thing. One thing. Before you open your laptop in the morning, decide what the one most important thing you could accomplish today is. Not five things. One.
And then do that first, before email, before Slack, before anything reactive.
Because you have the most willpower and the freshest cognitive resources in the morning. Don't spend them on other people's priorities.
I love that framing. Email is other people's priorities showing up in your inbox, and most of us start our day by just immediately handing our attention over to everyone else.
Exactly. And then by the time you finally get to your own work, you're already depleted. And then you wonder why you can't focus.
Okay, tip 2, the 90-minute block. Talk to me about this because I started doing this and it's been genuinely life-changing.
Yes, so this comes from research on ultradian rhythms. Your brain naturally cycles through periods of high alertness and lower alertness roughly every 90 minutes. And if you align your deep work sessions with those high alertness windows, you're working with your biology instead of against it.
So what does that look like practically?
Block 90 minutes on your calendar. No meetings, no notifications, no email. Just you and the one thing. And then take a real break, not scroll your phone, like actually step away.
Walk, stretch, stare out the window.
Yeah, something that lets your brain actually rest. And then go back for another session if you need to.
And the key thing here is protecting that block, because this is where most people fall down. They set the intention, but then someone asks for a quick meeting, and suddenly the whole thing goes out the window.
Guard it like it's a doctor's appointment because it kind of is. It's an appointment with your most important work.
I like that. Okay, tip 3, removing friction. This is huge, and people underestimate it.
So the idea is simple. You want to make distraction harder and focus easier. That sounds obvious, but most people do the opposite. They leave their phone on the desk, they have every app open, every notification on.
So what does removing friction look like?
Phone in another room, not just flipped over, another room. Because even the presence of your phone on a desk reduces cognitive capacity. There's research on this.
Just having it there, even if you're not looking at it.
Just having it there, your brain is partially allocated to monitoring it. So, another room. Browser tabs, close everything except what you need for the task. Put your most used distraction apps in a folder buried on the last page of your home screen. Make them annoying to access.
Friction as a feature.
Exactly. You're not trying to eliminate willpower, you're trying to not need it. And then, this is my personal favorite, go for a walk before starting deep work.
That sounds counterintuitive, like being nice to yourself makes you more productive.
It does. There's actually research on this by Kristen Neff and others. When people practice self-compassion around failure and setbacks, like, yeah, I didn't do the thing today, that's okay, I'll try again tomorrow, they actually bounce back faster and procrastinate less.
Because shame and self-criticism don't motivate action, they motivate avoidance.
Exactly. If every time I don't do the thing, I beat myself up about it, the thing becomes even more negatively associated in my brain. But if I can hold it with some lightness, it becomes less threatening.
So paradoxically, being hard on yourself about not focusing actually makes it harder to focus.
Right, the pressure backfires, whereas a little grace goes a long way.
I love that. Okay, I'm adding self-compassion to my productivity toolkit officially.
It should be at the top of the list, honestly.
Let me add one more practical thing that I think is really underrated, which is the power of a shutdown ritual.
Oh, yes, talk about this.
Oh, this one I felt. There's something about walking that just clears the mental clutter.
There's actually good science on this. Walking, especially without headphones, activates a kind of mental mode called the default mode network, which is where your brain does a lot of its background processing and creative synthesis. So when you sit down to work after a walk, you're often more mentally clear and more creative.
And it's one of the few times we allow our brains to be bored, which sounds bad, but boredom is actually really productive for deep thinking.
Yes, we've eliminated boredom from our lives. There's always a podcast, a scroll, something to fill the silence, and we've lost something really important in doing that.
Our brains need that fallow time, like fields that need to rest between growing seasons.
Beautiful analogy. I'm stealing that.
Please.
Okay, let's talk about how high performers actually do this, because I think there's this myth that elite performers, founders, athletes, writers, artists, just have more discipline or more willpower than the rest of us.
And they don't.
They really don't. What they have is better systems, and specifically rituals.
Yes, the power of rituals over motivation is so underrated.
Because motivation is unreliable. You can't count on feeling motivated. Some days you wake up fired up, some days you don't. And if your plan for doing your work is wait until I feel like it,
You're gonna wait a long time.
exactly. But a ritual, a consistent sequence of behaviors that signals to your brain, we're going into focus mode now, that's much more reliable.
Can you give some examples? Like, what do these rituals actually look like for people?
Sure. So Beethoven famously would count exactly 60 coffee beans every morning for his coffee. Every single day, same number.
That's very specific.
Very specific. But that consistency was essentially a mental trigger. Same beans, same ritual, same mental state. Maya Angelou, she would go to a hotel room to write. Not her home, not her office, a specific, boring hotel room with nothing to do but write.
She was removing friction and controlling the environment.
Exactly. And on the athletic side, look at athletes and their pregame rituals. Serena Williams bouncing the ball exactly 5 times for a first serve. LeBron James doing the chalk toss. These aren't superstitions, well, maybe a little, but they're also behavioral anchors that prime their nervous system for performance.
And you don't have to be LeBron or Beethoven. You can design your own ritual. The key elements are consistency, simplicity, and a clear signal to your brain that something important is about to happen.
Right, maybe it's making a specific kind of tea, or sitting in a specific chair, or doing 5 minutes of journaling before you start. The content matters less than the consistency.
Because over time, the ritual becomes a Pavlovian trigger. Your brain learns this sequence means focus time.
And I think another thing high performers do that we don't talk about enough is they're very deliberate about when they do which kinds of work.
Time blocking based on energy level.
Exactly. So creative, cognitively demanding work during peak energy times, administrative, routine tasks during low energy windows. Not everything deserves your best hours.
That's a great point. I used to schedule meetings first thing in the morning because I thought it would get them out of the way. And then I realized,
There's actually good science on this. Walking, especially without headphones, activates a kind of mental mode called the default mode network, which is where your brain does a lot of its background processing and creative synthesis. So when you sit down to work after a walk, you're often more mentally clear and more creative.
and it's one of the few times we allow our brains to be bored, which sounds bad, but boredom is actually really productive for deep thinking.
Yes, we've eliminated boredom from our lives. There's always a podcast, a scroll, something to fill the silence, and we've lost something really important in doing that.
Our brains need that fallow time, like fields that need to rest between growing seasons.
Beautiful analogy. I'm stealing that.
Please.
Okay, let's talk about how high performers actually do this, because I think there's this myth that elite performers, founders, athletes, writers, artists, just have more discipline or more willpower than the rest of us.
And they don't.
They really don't. What they have is better systems, and specifically rituals.
Yes, the power of rituals over motivation is so underrated.
Because motivation is unreliable. You can't count on feeling motivated. Some days you wake up fired up, some days you don't. And if your plan for doing your work is wait until I feel like it,
You're gonna wait a long time.
exactly.
But a ritual, a consistent sequence of behaviors that signals to your brain, we're going into focus mode now, that's much more reliable.
Can you give some examples? Like, what do these rituals actually look like for people?
Sure. So Beethoven famously would count exactly 60 coffee beans every morning for his coffee. Every single day, same number.
That's very specific.
Very specific. But that consistency was essentially a mental trigger. Same beans, same ritual, same mental state. Maya Angelou, she would go to a hotel room to write. Not her home, not her office, a specific, boring hotel room with nothing to do but write.
She was removing friction and controlling the environment.
Exactly. And on the athletic side, look at athletes and their pregame rituals. Serena Williams bouncing the ball exactly 5 times for a first serve. LeBron James doing the chalk toss. These aren't superstitions, well, maybe a little, but they're also behavioral anchors that prime their nervous system for performance.
And you don't have to be LeBron or Beethoven. You can design your own ritual. The key elements are consistency, simplicity, and a clear signal to your brain that something important is about to happen.
Right, maybe it's making a specific kind of tea, or sitting in a specific chair, or doing 5 minutes of journaling before you start. The content matters less than the consistency.
Because over time, the ritual becomes a Pavlovian trigger. Your brain learns this sequence means focus time.
And I think another thing high performers do that we don't talk about enough is they're very deliberate about when they do which kinds of work.
Time blocking based on energy level.
Exactly. So, creative, cognitively demanding work during peak energy times, administrative, routine tasks during low energy windows. Not everything deserves your best hours.
That's a great point. I used to schedule meetings first thing in the morning because I thought it would get them out of the way. And then I realized I was burning my peak cognitive hours on scheduling logistics. So Cal Newport writes about this too, having a deliberate end of workday routine that signals to your brain, we are done. Not just closing your laptop and then mentally still being at work for the rest of the evening.
Which so many of us do, especially since working from home became so common.
Right, the lines blur. So the shutdown ritual might be review your task list, note what's carried over to tomorrow, close all your tabs, say out loud or write in a journal, shutdown complete, something that marks the end.
And the reason this matters for focus is that if your brain knows work actually ends, there's a real off switch. It's more willing to actually be fully on during work hours. It's not conserving energy for an indefinite marathon.
It's the difference between a sprint and a death march, and our brains are much better at sprinting.
That is so true. Finite windows with clear endings actually help you work better within them.
It's like deadlines in a way. Parkinson's law. Work expands to fill the time available, so give it a container, a real one.
Parkinson's law is real, and it applies to focus sessions too. If you block 90 minutes, you'll fill 90 minutes productively. If you leave the whole day open, you'll probably spend most of it drifting.
Can we also talk about the role of physical environment? Because I think this is something high performers are really deliberate about that most people don't think about.
Yes, your environment is either working for you or against you. There's really no neutral. Yes, meetings are not neutral. They cost your best hours, and most meetings could be emails.
Could be an email, one of the truest sentences ever spoken.
But seriously, the pattern is know your peak hours, protect them for your most important creative work, and push everything else to later. It sounds simple, but very few people actually do it.
Because it requires saying no. Saying, no, I can't do a 9 a.m. meeting, even when the culture kind of expects you to be available.
And saying no is hard, especially for people pleasers, which, let's be honest, is a lot of us.
Especially in professional contexts. But every time you say yes to something that doesn't deserve your best hours, you're saying no to your most important work. It's a trade-off either way.
It's always a trade-off, and being intentional about those trade-offs is basically the whole game.
All right, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today. Let's bring it home. What's the one thing you want people to walk away with?
Oh gosh, just one? Okay, I think it's this. The problem is never the time. You have the same 24 hours as everyone else. The question is what you're doing with your attention inside those hours.
And attention is trainable. It's a skill, which means it can get better.
It can absolutely get better, and it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to become some monastic deep work warrior who never checks their phone. Progress is progress.
For me, I want to leave people with the challenge that we've been talking about. And this is something I'm actually doing myself starting this week. Reclaim 2 focused hours every day for 7 days. That's it, 2 hours. Put them on your calendar, protect them, and use them for your most important work.
2 hours of real focus, not split attention, not while checking email, is worth more than 6 hours of fragmented busyness, like empirically worth more.
And track how it feels at the end of the 7 days, because I think most people will be surprised by how much they can get done and how much better they feel about their work when they're actually present in it.
Yes, and if you try it and you want to share how it goes, we would genuinely love to hear from you. Reach out on Instagram, leave us a review, send a message. We read everything.
We really do read everything. Okay, any final thoughts?
Just be a little gentler with yourself. If you struggle to focus, you're not broken. You're human in an environment that was designed to make focusing hard. And the fact that you're even thinking about this stuff puts you ahead of the curve.
That's a great note to end on. All right, that's a wrap on today's episode of The Behavior Code. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Honestly, this episode might be exactly what that person in your life needs right now.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. We drop new episodes every week, and we've got some really exciting conversations coming up.
Truly exciting. Can't say too much yet, but yeah, stay tuned.
The mystery. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Take care of your attention. It might be the most valuable thing you've got.
See you next week.
Bye.
And it doesn't have to be fancy. It's about intentionality. Like, some people work best in absolute silence. Others need a certain kind of background noise. Coffee shop sounds, lo-fi music, white noise.
There's actually research that suggests low-level ambient noise, around 70 decibels, which is roughly coffee shop noise level, can actually enhance creative thinking. It's enough noise to mask sharp distractions, but not so much that it overwhelms your focus.
Which is why those coffee shop productivity apps exist. You're not just being quirky, there's something to it.
But the key is that whatever your ideal environment is, you create it intentionally and consistently, so that over time, walking into that space or putting on those headphones or sitting at that desk becomes part of your focus ritual.
The environment is a cue, and cues are incredibly powerful. Habit formation is all about cues, routines, and rewards.
James Clear talks about this a lot in Atomic Habits, the idea that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems, and your environment is a huge part of your system.
So if your system is phone on desk, every app open, desk in the living room with the TV nearby, your system is working against you, not because you're disciplined, but because the environment is sending constant signals that compete with focus.
Change the environment first, the behavior often follows.
You know, something I think about a lot, and this ties into the systems idea, is that focus isn't just something that happens in the moment. It's something you build capacity for over time, like a muscle.
And like a muscle, it atrophies if you don't use it. If you've spent years training your brain to always be stimulated, always switching, always reacting, you've actually reduced your capacity for sustained attention.
Which is kind of scary, but also hopeful, right? Because if it can get worse, it can get better.
Absolutely. And the research on neuroplasticity supports that. Your brain can actually rewire itself. It takes time and consistent practice, but it's possible. People who meditate regularly, for example, show measurable differences in the parts of the brain associated with attention and self-regulation.
And meditation is basically a gym session for your attention muscle. You notice your mind wandering, you gently bring it back. Repeat, over and over.
And the returning is the exercise, not the perfect sustained focus. The noticing and coming back, that's what builds the capacity.
That reframe helped me so much when I first started meditating, because I kept thinking I was doing it wrong because my mind kept wandering. And then I learned that's the whole point. It's supposed to wander. Your job is just to notice and come back.
And that same skill, noticing distraction and returning to the task, is exactly what you're practicing when you do deep work. It transfers directly.